right in the big red building, right next to the Bergen. Let's go see Art Gallery.
Alright, you're all checked in. Can I see? You don't have ice cream, right? That was the other thing. Alright, right on through the gate. First step on the ramp. We're at low tide, so it's really steep. Take your time, okay? Enjoy your cruise.
Hello.
I see somebody who needs a sticker. There you are. Now you can say you've already seen an orca. Oh, here's one more. Here you go.
Thank you.
Welcome. If you'd like to go upstairs, the stairs will be right there for you.
Stairs. Дети. Ай, врезался.
Туда пойдем, где этот, еще
Да.
выше?
Да.
Или может здесь?
Сандек. Капитан. Поехали. О.
It's one of our Washington State ferries just getting underway. And we'll be giving a blast of our ship's whistle as well, but Kyle will give you fair warning about that. I do want to play a pre-recorded safety announcement, and then once that's concluded, I'll have a couple more words before we get off the dock. So here you go.
The boat you're traveling on today is the Salish Explorer. It is Coast Guard certified and inspected to carry up to 500 passengers. That means we have life-saving equipment on board for all of you. Life jackets can be found underneath the perimeter bench seat.
Cover your ears in 3, 2, 1. It's one of my favorite parts of this job. How are you guys doing today? Well, excellent. My name is Kyle once again. I'll be the guy chatting your ears off during this 1-hour tour. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this beautiful Seattle day. A little bit about myself. Born and raised here in the Pacific Northwest. Before I landed a job here with Argosy, I worked in not only Seattle rock radio, but also I was a craft brewer here on the craft beer scene. But you'll kind of notice some of those nerdisms coming out during the tour today. But enough about me. How about yourselves? Any Washington locals here on the ship? All right, nobody to fact check me. All right, I like it. Okay, anybody from the United States but outside of Washington? Yeah. All righty, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, any international travelers today by show of hands? Okay, a couple of you. Well, thank you for making the trek. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you. All right, so a couple terms I want you guys to keep in mind during this tour. A couple nautical terms are the words port and starboard. When you're facing the front of the ship, port is going to be on your left-hand side and starboard is going to be on your right-hand side. If you just remember those two terms, you'll do just fine on this trip. Alrighty, as we get underway here, I'm going to put those terms to use right away. So coming up past the Seattle Great Wheel, actually I'm going to touch on the Seattle Great Wheel by the way. course, you can't miss this gigantic Ferris wheel. Believe it or not, that was the largest Ferris wheel in the world at one point in time. Up until Las Vegas heard that we were number one, and then they had to build something bigger. But of course, that's how it always works out in Vegas. But right behind Seattle's Great Wheel, we have one of my favorite childhood attractions, which is this long gray building with the lime green trim. That is Pier 59, the Seattle Aquarium. Now, the Seattle Aquarium is super special. They mainly focus on the wildlife here in the Puget Sound, and as opposed to like teaching their animals tricks, like what happens over at SeaWorld, they mainly focus on research, education, and rehabilitation. One of my favorite exhibits over there is the exhibit of the giant Pacific octopus. It is named the giant Pacific octopus for a very good reason, because it is the largest species of octopi in the entire world. As a matter of fact, the tentacle span of giant Pacific octopi can get as long as 32 feet across. And just to put that into perspective with you guys, this boat that we're currently on is 34 feet wide. So if there was one of those octopi sitting right here in one of these empty chairs up top, it would be able to touch just about everybody sitting up here, which is pretty impressive. Now, according to the life cycles of your typical octopi, basically they come to a mature age, they breed, and they pass away shortly. Sprints of the medicine that she needs, and then goes on her merry little otter way, which I think is pretty awesome. So if you got to teach animals tricks, at least it's a handy one, am I right? Now, another little fun fact about otters is when they sleep, they hold hands with each other. That particular act is called rafting, and that way, when they're sleeping, they don't float away from each other and they don't lose their significant otter. You see what I did there? I hope you like dad jokes, because there's more ahead, I promise you. Now, coming up here on our starboard side, we see this mural of a lady's face up halfway up the skyline there. Now, right before that is the Pike Place Market. By show of hands, has anybody been to the Pike Place Market yet? Excellent, very nice. This is another one of my favorite locations. Some of the most popular parts with the flying fish and whatnot in the market are right at street level, but believe it or not, there are 5 different levels to that particular market. If you ever venture down into the depths, the lowest floor of the market, there is a vintage magic shop, which I highly suggest checking out. The folks that work at that shop are definitely eager to show off their skills, and I'll just give you a little bit of a spoiler. If you ever see one of them pull out their wallet, just be prepared, it's going to burst into flames. So definitely fun to check out. It is a hot spot for tourists, but also very beloved by locals. I myself have shopped there 2 days ago, buying some flowers, trying to suck up to my girlfriend. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, so coming up here on our starboard side is a hotel that I love telling stories about, because there's so many funny stories. Sticking out here, it's this long gray hotel with the kind of gold highlights and the big red trademark E's on the top. That is the Edgewater Hotel. The Edgewater Hotel was built in 1962, which was a really important year here in Seattle. It's not only the year that the Seattle's World's Fair came to town, but it's also the year that the Space Needle was built. Now, for the Seattle's World's Fair, it was expected that 10 million people were going to come to town for that event. So the founders of the Edgewater had a great idea. Hey, these people are going to need a place to stay. Let's build a beautiful hotel right on the water and give them a true Pacific Northwest experience. Sounds like a great idea, right? Well, I'll tell you what, not a single person of that 10 million person group stayed at the Edgewater. And that is because the Edgewater opened up 2 weeks after everybody went home. Wah, wah. Well, believe it or not, building a big hotel over the water takes a lot of permitting, and there were construction delays upon construction delays, which delayed that opening in time. So, the developers had this big monetary investment in this building, but they needed a way to get rich quick, fast. So the marketing team at the Edgewater came up with this crackpot idea. Hey, we're on the water. Why don't we tell people that they can fish directly from their hotel room windows? And that's exactly what they did. When you would check in, they would hand you a fishing rod and a bucket. They opened up a bait and tackle shop right in their hotel lobby, and they said, hey, go have fun. Sounds like another great idea. That is Myrtle Edwards Park. Now, Myrtle Edwards is basically Seattle's version of Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec. You're familiar? She was a city council member back during the 1960s, during the downtown boom, where Seattle got turned into the concrete jungle that you see today. She really recognized how important it was to have access to outdoor spaces, not only for physical health, but also for mental health, just to get out there in nature. And she really spearheaded a bunch of projects to preserve natural spaces and to have parks within a 10-minute walking distance from any front door here in the city. As a matter of fact, some of her most popular projects that she worked on were the Woodland Park Zoo, as well as our world-famous Gasworks Park, which has been featured in several movies such as 10 Things I Hate About You, Singles, as well as Star Wars Episode 5, Revenge of the Fifth. I can't even talk. Revenge of the Sith. I'm lying about that one, and I stumbled over my own jokes. Thank you very much. Saved me from that bad. But yeah, so we named this city, or this park, after her, just to show homage, and this is one of our more beautiful parks. Speaking of beautiful parks, up here on Beacon Hill with those 3 radio towers, there is a really small park called Perry Park. But locals call it Postcard Park, and the reasoning behind that is every iconic picture of the space needle that you see, especially on postcards, is taken up there in that park. Basically, it has a great high view where you can get a great shot of the space needle. So if you have time, definitely take a moment to check out Perry Park. Now, coming up ahead of us on our starboard side, you're going to see a big, long ship. This particular ship coming up on our starboard side is a bulk carrier. Now, bulk carriers, they carry a lot of one thing. And I believe they're actually loading it up as we speak. Yes, you can see there is a long white arm extending from this tall structure going down to the deck of the ship. It is currently loading up that ship with Seattle's #1 largest export by volume, which is, can you guess? Beer. That's a great guess, man. Which is cattle grade grain, which is kind of interesting because you might think that it might be coffee, might be computer parts, might be craft beer, might even be hipsters, but believe it or not, we import those from Portland. But it is cattle grade grain, which is grown out in the Midwest, loaded up onto rail cars, and then shipped here via railroad, where it gets loaded up into these tall white silos that you see on the shore here. Now, the only reason why this particular ship is getting loaded today is because it is so beautiful. So the weather's nice, no rain. If it were raining today, they would have to halt the loading of the ship. And the reasoning behind that is simple. What happens to grain when it gets wet? It not only rots, but it also ferments. And this being cattle grade grain, nobody wants a herd of drunken sick cows on their hands. That would be a big issue. Yeah, you can hear those motors really on that grain elevator, really pushing the grain. So you can see that there's, I believe, 7 of these square structures on the deck of the ship. You can see some of the lids are pushed off, and they are loading that ship as we speak. Now, on the side of the ship here, you'll see that there's a blue paint job and a red paint job. And I can tell that they just recently started loading this ship because when the ship is full, the border between the 2 colors will be right about at sea level. And as a matter of fact, you can see that there's a little less of that red showing towards the back of the ship here, which probably tell me that they just got done loading up those first hatches. So pretty soon that will be taking off to our Pacific Asian trading partners. And the reason why they use Seattle as a port as opposed to maybe sunny or like Southern California, somewhere down there, is that due to the curvature of the water, it takes 1 to 3 less days to dry. Largest trees that you'll ever see. And a forest floor so lush with thick moss that you can walk around barefoot like you're walking on shag carpet. absolutely beautiful. If you ever have time to go out to the Olympic Peninsula, I highly suggest you do so. There's even a beach out there called Murdoch Beach where you can pick up fossils right off the ground. Absolutely beautiful. Now, looking back towards the city skyline, this is my favorite view of the city. You get to see all of it, all in its glory. So I'm going to talk about the city. This is a tour of Seattle, so we've got to talk about the Space Needle. Like I mentioned earlier, the Space Needle was built in 1962 for the World's Fair. That bad boy is 605 feet tall. And believe it or not, the Space Needle is one of the safest buildings to be in the event of a natural disaster. As a matter of fact, this Space Needle can withstand an earthquake up to a magnitude of 9.1 on the Richter scale. And it can also withstand winds up to 200 miles an hour. And that's because the foundation under the Space Needle is absolutely massive in New York City at that particular time. From a little personal standpoint of mine, my great-grandfather was an iron worker on the Space Needle project, which I'm really proud of. Back when he was working on the Space Needle there, he got paid $2.93 an hour. It's pretty amazing. It doesn't seem like much, but in converted to today's value, it's about $22 an hour. It's not bad. Now, the average depth of the Puget Sound is about 600 feet deep, a little bit deeper than that, which means if you drop the Space Needle in the average depth, the whole thing would disappear. And the deepest part of the Puget Sound is a little bit deeper than 950 feet, which means if we took the entirety of downtown Seattle, dropped it in the water there, you know we won. The rest of the tour here, I have a very important question for you. Where did the little boat go when it was feeling sick? The dock. See, I told you there were more dad jokes. And while that is a lame dad joke, that is exactly what is happening over here at the bigger Shipyards. These U-shaped structures, these gray U-shaped structures are dry docks. And the way that they work is they get filled up full of water and they sink very slowly. When they're underwater, ships will sail into that void, the water will get pumped out, and those dry docks will float with the ships inside of them. Basically, boats for boats is the way I like to put it. And what we got going on over here at the bigger Shipyard, on the right-hand side is a naval destroyer that's having some work done. And you'll notice that it has a lot of white tarping up top. Sometimes folks think that it's because they're doing something very top secret underneath those tarps. But the truth is those tarps are there to contain any kind of mess, dust, or debris that may occur in whatever project that they have going on. So no secret ops going on, at least as far as we know. Now to the left of that is a Washington State ferry kind of hiding underneath a big white poncho and behind its little black security like private screen there. That particular ferry is getting a new paint job done, so of course you got to chip all the, or sandblast all of the paint off at the hole there, which is a very messy process, hence all of that tarping. And then it's going to get a nice new paint job. Now paint jobs are very important for ships, not only to make them look cool, but paint is the first line of defense against the corrosive salt water on its stern. It would be taller than every building in Seattle. Insane. As a matter of fact, another cool fact about this is these containers, they can carry 10,000 of these containers. Gigantic. I'm sure we've all seen them from a distance, but Captain Christie's given us up close and personal, which is really awe-inspiring. I love it. And look, we get to see one of these containers getting dropped inside the hole right now. Like I said, it can carry up to 10,000 of these containers, and if you try to count them all, you'll only be able to count about half of them, because the majority of them, as you can see, get lowered into the hull of the ship, and the heaviest ones get stacked on the bottom here. It's absolutely amazing to see these. Man. So these crane operators, as you can tell, play the world's largest game of the claw game that you get to play in these arcades. The longshoremen up there, they only work between 2 and 6 hours at a time, and they get paid on average $160,000 to do so. It is insane. You might be thinking to yourself, hey, why don't I get that job? But I'll tell you what, if you want that job, good luck, because you're literally going to need it. A couple years ago, two positions as crane operator opened up, and over 3,000 people applied to that job. So many people that they had to run a lottery just to figure out who they were going to interview. So with the lottery, they picked 200 winners to be interviewed, and then those 200 people had to duke it out for just 2 positions as crane operators. So like I said, if you want their jobs, good luck. You're gonna need to win the lottery just to get interviewed. Now looking to the port side of the ship here, we have a brick building with a clock tower on top and some very familiar looking eyes peeking out at us. That is Starbucks World Headquarters over there, the coffee that changed the world. Now, a fun little story about Starbucks is when that company was first being established back in the 1970s, the founders wanted to name it after something that was kind of inspired by trade or the Pacific Northwest, something like that. And they were looking at old mining maps. Up to 10,000 containers can get loaded up onto these ships. Every once in a while, somebody will ask me, hey, do these containers ever fall into the ocean? And the answer is yes. On average, about 1,500 of these containers get lost at sea every year, which seems like a lot. Well, if you keep in mind that there's about 50,000 of these ships circling the globe right now, these ships carrying about 10,000 containers is really just a drop in the bucket. Now, back in 1992, a very famous container got lost at sea. There was a ship coming from Hong Kong over to Tacoma, our port town just about half an hour south of us. And in the Pacific Ocean, they encountered a storm with 40-foot waves. And oh look, there's a little seal kind of floating in the waters down here. What's up, buddy? You see him just kind of poking his head out in the sunshine? There he is. Hey, a little wildlife sighting. Gotta love it. And he's gone. See you later. Well, these waves, 40 foot tall. Up here on the top deck, we're just about 20 feet off the water, so imagine double the height of those waves. And that ship experienced a 50-degree lift, which means it was more on its side than it was straight up. And some of the steel banding that held those containers ended up snapping. One of those containers hit the water and exploded, releasing tens of thousands of rubber duckies. When those rubber duckies were released into their not-so-natural habitat, they started floating around the oceans, riding the currents. And while it's not necessarily a great thing to have a bunch of plastic floating around our oceans, the oceanographers and scientists over at the University of Washington took advantage and started tracking where they were floating. They actually opened up a hotline, so if you found one washed up on a beach, you can call that number and report this whole little study helped us understand how ocean currents work more on a deeper level, and then also these rubber duckies helped us discover the giant Pacific garbage patch. So it's kind of a good thing to have. So no matter where you're at ever in the world, if you ever find a rubber ducky washed up on shore, make sure to grab it because the oceanographers at UW are going to want to talk to you. Now over here on our starboard side, we are now in the SoDo area of Seattle. SoDo stands for South Downtown, and as you can see, it's the home of our two largest sports stadiums. On the right, we have T-Mobile Park, the home to our Major League Baseball team, the Seattle Mariners, who are currently in first place. Thank you very much. And on the left-hand side, we have Lumen Field, which is the home to our two soccer teams, the Seattle Sounders FC and the Seattle Reign FC, and our NFL team, the Seattle Seahawks. Go Hawks. Now, with the team of a different kind came to town, a beast known as Taylor Swift. Oh yes. When Taylor Swift and the Swifties converged on Seattle, they had in store for us a 2-night back-to-back concert extravaganza. And on the very first night, during the song, I kid you not, Shake It Off, our scientists detected an earthquake, a magnitude of 2.3 on the Richter scale. Bringing the beast mode quake. A big difference between the beast mode earthquake and the Taylor Swift earthquake is, like I said, 2.3 to 2.1 magnitude. That's actually equal to double the amount of shaking based on the logarithmic workings of the Richter scale. The beast quake was only 10 seconds long, whereas Taylor Swift's earthquake lasted for 3 hours. As a matter of fact, it lasted for 3 hours, 2 nights in a row, back to back, for a grand total of 6 hours of shaking Seattle down to the ground. As a matter of fact, one of my fellow crew members here was on a Washington State ferry coming into Seattle during one of those shows. And if you look out and see where the ferry is right now out there on our port side, that's about where he was. And he could hear the fans screaming from all the way out there at Taylor Swift's show. Absolutely amazing. As we come into our dock here, we're going to get an up-close view of one of our Washington State ferries. You're going to be able to see right down the throat of it where it looks like it should be loading up with cars, so that's always a very cool view there. But unfortunately, my time is about up here with you guys. I am not only your narrator today, I'm also your deckhand, so I have to go get ready to tie the boat up here. But I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. Did you have fun? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing this beautiful day. I'm going to go get us tied up. I'll be the last person that you see when you leave the boat, so if you want to give me a high five or a knuckle bump, or if you have any questions for me, feel free to chat me up then. But until then, I'm going to pass the mic on to Captain Christy here. And once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, how about a round of applause for Kyle as he heads down to prepare the boat for tide just up ahead of Pier 55, where we departed from an hour ago. And once he has the vessel tied up, he'll then make himself available for any questions you might have for him about that fantastic tour and hosting over the last hour. And as you know, he's a local guide of the Pacific Northwest and can answer any questions you might have or make recommendations, certainly for great clubs to go to. That's definitely a must if you're looking for somewhere to go like that. Chat with him about that. And that's also a great time to show him your appreciation for a job well done. Otherwise, I'm just going to give you a little helpful hint. I'm going to let you know that we have closed off the valve for disembarking. If you're on the top deck or second deck, you'll be exiting down the back of the boat. And on the way down, if you wouldn't mind, closing out the water taps, dropping off any glassware, cans, bottles, wrappers. That would be really helpful to us. Otherwise, I'll let you just enjoy the last couple minutes of being on a boat, those last few photos, and I'll have some parting words once we're secure.
Spirit of Seattle.
On the dock.
Ага. Ready? Steady, go.
Пошлите, дети.
А.
С этого. С Кубы Шхабад едет с тобой.
Ага.
I just can't have it. It's too early. I'll fall asleep.
Welcome aboard.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, guys.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for coming to support today. So I'm in on
Ага.
Все, теперь пойдем в этот торговый центр.
Ага.
Пройдемся по городу.
Ага.